Since the start of the conflict in March 2015, human rights violations and abuses against journalists have increased in Yemen. These abuses include killings, enforced disappearance, abduction, physical assaults. This year, 2021, witnessed also further violations. This report has more details.
The year 2021 turned its record and many violations were committed against journalists in Yemen, which amounted to 104 cases of violations affecting media outlets, journalists and photographers, and the looting of their possessions since the beginning of January until the end of December of the same year. The healthy areas represented in the first place an unsafe and more hostile environment for journalists, according to the statement of the Yemeni Journalists Syndicate in the annual report on media freedom. The violations were distributed among 30 cases of freedom detention, 19 cases of prevention and confiscation of journalists and their belongings, 12 cases of threats and incitement, 12 cases of trial, 11 cases of assault, 6 cases of depriving detained journalists from the right to medical care, 5 cases of torture, 5 cases of suspension of media and journalists' entitlements, and 4 cases of murder. The Houthis alone committed 46 cases of violations out of the total violations, while other parties committed the rest against journalists, and there are still 14 journalists detained by different parties, including 12 journalists with the Houthi group, some of whom the group issued unfair sentences to death. With regard to prevention and confiscation, the syndicate recorded 19 cases, including 10 cases of prevention of press coverage, 4 cases of banning from visiting the kidnapped journalists, 3 cases of confiscation of photojournalist cameras, 2 confiscation of journalist cars, 6 cases of deprivation of the abductees from the right to health care, and 5 cases of torture of abductees. Many journalists and foreign media correspondents complain about the restrictions imposed by the Houthi militia on journalistic work, through illegal internal regulations that impose restrictions, control, and sums of money on media work, in light of continuous calls to save the press and journalists in Yemen, and to stop the policies practiced by the terrorist group to target the press and journalists' respect for freedom of opinion and expression. Journalists are suffering in Yemen due to Houthi violations. They are being deprived from the right of living a decent life, and no one knows when will that end.